My final project is about Kurt Cobain, the frontman for the Seattle-based grunge band Nirvana. Kurt Donald Cobain was born on February 20th, 1967 in a small logging town on the Pacific Northwest called Aberdeen. Kurt had an interest and natural talent for drawing and music, which was apparent at an early age. He learned to play the piano by ear and also played on a children's drum set given to him by his parents. At the urging of his father, he played Little League Baseball. Kurt also had a young sister named Kim who was born in 1971. Both Kurt and Kim sometimes spent time together, but this time was overshadowed by the fighting of their parents, whose marriage would end in divorce. After the divorce, at age 9 for Kurt, he moved in with his father and became withdrawn. The highlight during this time in his life was a guitar that his uncle bought for him, encouraging Kurt to further his interest in the arts. While living with his father, Kurt began experimenting with drugs, and after leaving his father's house, he bounced around the houses of relatives until he went to live with his mother Wendy and her future husband Pat. During high school, Kurt Cobain's artistic talents impressed his teachers, albeit with quite a unique and odd taste in subject matter. He also discovered the local punk scene during this time, including his friend Buzz Osborne of the Melvins. The mid-1980s saw Kurt living in various places, including apartment building hallways and even a hospital waiting room when he had nowhere else to sleep, as well as an arrest for spray painting buildings in town with some of his friends. It was after the spray painting incident that Kurt started his first band, Fecal Matter, along with his friends from the Melvins. They recorded a few songs together but never played any live shows. In 1986, Kurt spent several days in jail because he was found drunk and wandering around an abandoned building at night. Around the same time, he started playing music with Chris Novoselic, a bassist 2 years his senior whom Kurt had met through Novoselic's brother Robert, as well as the Melvins. Teaming up with a local drummer named Aaron Burkhard, they played their first gig in 1987 at a house party. Kurt also began going out with his first serious girlfriend, Tracy Mirander, in 1987. They moved in together and enjoyed exploring creative outlets, although they struggled financially. Finally, in 1988, Kurt decided that the name of his band would be Nirvana after the goal of the Buddhist path. Their first single was Love Buzz, released by Sub Pop Records. Nirvana's popularity grew, and in 1989, they released their first album titled Bleach. The album's response was subpar, and Kurt felt that Sub Pop was mistreating the band. However, they still toured with Sonic Youth in 1990 while beginning a whirlwind of changes. The band released their drummer at the time, Chad Channing, and replaced him with Dave Grohl from the Washington, D.C. hardcore band Scream. They'd become the lineup we're all so familiar with today. Nirvana left Sub Pop Records and signed with Geffen Records in 1991. That same year, they spearheaded a musical revolution with the release of Nevermind. The album wasn't expected to be a commercial success, but skyrocketed in the charts largely in part to its first single, Smells Like Teen Spirit, which had quite a popular music video to accompany it. Before the release of Nevermind, Kurt met up with Courtney Love, the lead singer and guitar player for the band Hole. They'd met once before, but this time they began keeping in touch with phone calls, faxes, and letters while each of their bands traveled. This would come to be quite a tumultuous relationship in which they bonded over their love of heroin. Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love were married on February 24th of 1992 on Waikiki Beach after the conclusion of Nirvana's Pacific Rim tour. Dave Grohl was one of 8 people in attendance at the wedding. Courtney wore a dress once owned by Frances Farmer, and Kurt wore green pajamas. With the commercial success of Nevermind, Kurt began to become resentful of the music industry and the mass amounts of fans the band acquired, who Kurt felt did not fully understand the message behind his music. Despite of, and perhaps because of, Kurt's resentment, he became looked at as a spokesman for his generation. Nirvana's album, Nevermind, paved the way for many Seattle bands such as Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Alice in Chains to reach a wider audience. During the height of Kurt Cobain's career, his wife Courtney gave birth to their daughter. Frances Bean Cobain was born on August 18, 1992. Kurt and Courtney loved Frances very much. She was the inspiration for the both of them to try rehab. However, neither could stay clean for too long, in part due to Kurt's ongoing stomach condition that his doctors were unable to properly diagnose or treat. In 1993, Nirvana released In Utero, the band's third studio album. This was Kurt's challenge to the band's fans and shared his outlook on his newfound fame, as well as his widely publicized personal life. The fans were up to the challenge, with the album entering the Billboard 200 chart at number 1, going on to be certified 5 times platinum. Cobain, in response to the world around him, became increasingly distant from the other members of his band. He and Courtney spent their time enjoying drug use or fighting over it, as well as caring for their daughter. Although he hadn't been able to fully enjoy making music anymore, he continued to commit time to Nirvana, including his most memorable show performed for MTV's Unplugged series in New York and a European tour that same winter. During the European tour, Kurt took a break to spend time with Courtney and Francis. He attempted suicide in his hotel room on March 4, 1994, but was rushed to the hospital in time to be saved. He'd taken an overdose of Rohypnol, otherwise known as roofies, or the date rape drug. He returned to the United States, where he spent most of his time high and alone. On March 18, 1994, the police were called to his house by Courtney Love, who claimed Kurt had locked himself in a room with a gun. The police confiscated several guns and a bottle of pills from the home. A week later, Courtney staged an intervention for Kurt, convincing him to check into a detox program in Los Angeles on March 30th. He did not stay long, for he jumped over the fence at the facility the same night and caught a plane back to Seattle. Upon his arrival in town, his whereabouts were unknown by his family. He was spotted at various places around town in the next following days. Courtney hired a private detective to find Kurt, and amidst rumors that Nirvana was going to break up, the band decided to pull out of the lineup for the Lollapalooza Music Festival. On April 8, 1994, Kurt's body was discovered at his residence, located at 171 Lake Washington Boulevard East, by a man who had arrived to install a security system. He'd used a shotgun to mortally wound himself after writing a lengthy suicide note approximately 3 days earlier, the suicide note being written in red ink, addressed to his childhood imaginary friend Boda, with the ending being dedicated to Courtney and Francis. After Kurt's death, Nirvana's music went on to inspire and intrigue fans around the world. Every year on the anniversary of his death, fans gather in the park near his last residence to celebrate his life and memory. To this day, Kurt Cobain is still widely revered as an icon for Generation X, with some critics reviewing him as the last real rock star.